am so glad you are here because you make the difference.
You sure?
When Martin and I were challenged by the Koch brothers for their crude oil pipeline, it looked impossible. They are one of the largest privately owned companies in the world. And we entered in a legal battle, and we had an attorney, and we submitted testimony. And all of that was really important to being successful at that attempt. But the most important thing was those 4,500 letters that were sent to the judge. We would not have succeeded without those letters. And that is why your presence here today is so, so important. We're going to have many, many battles against Monsanto. We're going to have legal cases and labeling efforts and policy change efforts. And on some of them we will succeed at what we try to do, and some of them we won't. We will try and we will look like we haven't succeeded. Because this is a social movement, and the only way we're going to win in the end is with many, many people. When Goliath fights with David, David needs a lot of friends. So we know Monsanto has a lot of money. They probably have more money than we do, but we have the people. And you brought your voices. Are you going to be heard? Everybody needs to hear you. Monsanto says GMOs are safe. Are you going to be heard about that? Are you going to tell everybody you know about the adverse effects of GMOs and the chemicals they use? About obesity and diabetes and birth defects and premature death, cancer? Monsanto says that GMOs are sustainable? Are you going to tell them that a chemical-dependent GMO monocultural system is the leading cause of biological diversity loss? Monsanto says that GMOs are like nature-made. You gotta laugh about that. They seem to think that GMO means God move over. Well, if they insist that they own the seed, guess what? That means they are liable. And it's going to be your job to tell everybody and to hold them accountable. You know, in early 1980s, a U.S. judge said that everything under the sun that is made by man can be patented. And that's when this problem really, really started. There was a huge rush to patent life, seeds, plants, genes. As a farmer, we started to really deal with it in 1997. We were organic vegetable farmers. Sweet corn was one of our main crops. And in 1997, our neighbors started to plant GMO field corn. And it was a complete game changer for us because all of a sudden we had to work so hard to keep our sweet corn from being contaminated. You know, the pollen doesn't just stay right where it is. The wind spreads it, the bees spread it, the birds spread it, and it would come into our fields. And the only way that we could keep our crops free was to really carefully pay attention to when our neighbors planted and know when their crops were going to pollinate and try to time our crops at a different time. And sometimes we pulled it off and we could sell the crop, and sometimes we couldn't pull it off and we had to disc those crops in. They were a loss. Now Martin and I do sweet corn breeding because we have to have varieties that are not GMOs. And I have to tell you, the saddest thing, the hardest thing that I faced as a farmer was being able to get seeds. Monsanto has gone around the entire world buying up seed companies. They now own 90% of seed varieties, not just GMO varieties, but 90% of all seed varieties. And they buy those companies and they take the seeds and they take many of them and put them on the shelf, no longer available to farmers. So it's become incredibly difficult for our farmers to access the seed that they need, and we have to do this breeding. So Martin and I now are breeding sweet corn, and we're able to keep the purity of the seed as we're breeding it because it's a small plot and we can cover the seeds with a plastic bag in the breeding process. But when we go to release this seed, when it's finished and we have to produce it in volume to be able to provide the seed to other farmers, we don't know yet where we are going to be able to do that. We know we can't do it in Minnesota. We won't be able to keep it pure here. So we need to hear from all of you, and you need to all be in there fighting. The other thing I want to tell you about as a farmer that I'm seeing that is really shocking to me as a farmer. Martin and I have transitioned many fields to organic in our career, and before there were GMOs, we could do it in about 3 years. We would plant soil building crops and bring the life back to the soil when it had been chemically farmed, and in about 3 years we had good loam, we had good soil, we could take good crops off that. Now we're finding the last piece I've transitioned, it's been in transition now for 5 years. It had been in GMOs for 15 years before that, and it's just not coming around. The microbial life has been damaged. The decomposition process has been halted. We're finding that the GMO corn stalks do not decompose properly. Some of them are still visible after 5 years of working on this soil. Farmers are reporting that the GMO corn stalks are so tough they won't decompose that they're puncturing tractor tires. So this is just an outrage that they can own our food. This Monsanto march, it is really a march to end the dictatorship over seed. And this right to choose our food, it is our most fundamental right. It's where we hold our daily power. Seed is that first link in food and the most fundamental issue of all. So, I talked about this being a social movement, and that's the most crucial message that I want to leave you with, is that you need to be really vocal. You need to be talking to people. And it's really important to think of yourself as an educator. That's one of the things that I learned when we took on the Koch brothers, because on the one hand, we were in a fight, but even more so, we were in an education process because we had to educate the Public Utilities Commission and the Department of Agriculture. And that's what you have to do. You have to go out, you've got to educate the grocery stores where you shop, or the grocery stores in your neighborhood. Go in there and tell them that you won't buy the food in their store until it is labeled. If you own stock in a company, tell that company that you have this policy. Tell absolutely everybody, and stand firm. When you go in those grocery stores, know that it's everywhere. 80% of the processed food in those grocery stores contains GMO. The meat department, the animals are fed GMO feed. We need to be talking to all those areas. And then there's the alternative. As an organic vegetable farmer, we would never have been successful without our customers. That's what it took to make our farm a success. The fact that we had a relationship with our customers. We could do the things that we had to do, take the risks, build the infrastructure, all of those things to be able to be a successful farm and to really fight GMOs and to really fight Monsanto. We have to create the alternative. So support those local farmers. Buy as direct as you can, either from the farmer or from a store that buys from those farmers. In the Twin Cities, we are so fortunate to have so many natural food co-ops. I want to, before I leave here, thank 3 people who have been amazing organizers for this event. And that is Dan Allen. Are you guys around here?
He's over there.
Shake it up there so people can see you, Dan. And Abby Ray Lacombe, she's right here. And Martin Brown. And Cobra Kai.
I was toting my pack along the fields and countryside when along came a crop duster spraying some damn pesticide. It burned my eyes and throat. I couldn't find no place to hide. So I flagged down a funky trip on his way to the March Against Monsanto rally at St. Paul, Minnesota, and I settled down inside. And he asked me if I'd seen so much poison sprayed by just one man. And I said, listen, they're spraying everywhere in this here land. They're spraying everywhere, men, they're spraying everywhere. Across America's farmland, polluting the soil and the water, man. They're spraying all over this world. They're spraying everywhere.